Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on this lovely snowy Armageddon day in the Rocky Mountains today. And we hope that you are safe and warm wherever you are. And like me, I'm sure you also wish and hope this is the last big snow event of the year. Welcome to our first of 3 April Association Essential Series courses. My name is Michael Johnson. I'm the CEO of the HOA Living Companies. And today we are talking about federal laws for community associations. Just a reminder that you can find all of our previous sessions available at HOALiving.com, Training Association Essential Series. You can also find them on our YouTube channel. As I mentioned, today we're doing federal laws. Please join us tomorrow. You can scan that QR code quickly and register if you are one of our Utah clients, customers, or just wondering how those crazy folks in Utah are doing things. We're going to talk about the recently completed Utah legislative session and the changes to the Utah laws. That will be at 11 a.m. Pacific, noon Mountain, and 1 o'clock Central tomorrow. One of our member companies, FCS Community Management, has been nominated for the Best of Salt Lake City contest. And under the category of property management, they won that contest last year, and they would like to win it again this year. So please scan that QR code. You can only vote one time in this contest. It does it by your phone number. We're okay if you go get 10, 11, 100 of your friends' cell phone numbers and vote from there as well. But that is open, I believe, through April the 12th. And on April the 12th, next week, is our 24th birthday. It's Founders Day. And from our very first company, which was Future Community Services, in 1999. We officially organized, and so it's the 24th anniversary next week. Come into any of our Utah locations and get a treat and say hi. We'd be glad to see you next week. Another reminder that a week from Saturday, and this is for anyone across the country, please join us for our Board Leadership Certificate course, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Mountain Time. Previously, our previous slides, I believe last month said 9 a.m. to noon. We've already got 100 people registered for this virtual course. There'll be multiple teachers, so you're not stuck with me for 4 hours, thank heavens. But that'll be next Saturday, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. A great half dozen instructors who will walk you through the Board Leadership Certificate course next Saturday. You can still register. We won't have the manual for you in time from the national office, but it's not necessarily essential to listen to the course on Saturday. We'll get the manual to you just as soon as we can. Hey, we are excited to announce for the first time, we are offering a $2,500 higher ed scholarship. And you can go to our website. You can scan that QR code there, or go to the website. And next month we'll put the actual website address on these slides for you too, because I know everyone's not QR code savvy. And we will, but you can go to HOALiving.com and search for scholarship and also find it now through July 19th. It's an online application. It's a 700-ish word essay on building community. Do it outside of the website and then copy and paste it into the website is our recommendation. So you have a copy. We're excited to hear from our high school seniors or even adults who are going back to college or currently in college and on building community. And then we'll award a $2,500 scholarship at the end of July. So we're super excited for that. And I think we'll have an event where our winner comes and presents their thoughts on building community at a future broadcast. Lots of opportunities to commute with us through social media, to connect with us. Don't commute with us, connect with us through social media. If you're not subscribed to our Community Scoop newsletter, that's our monthly e-newsletter for board members, whether you're in an HOA Living owned or affiliated company board or not, we'd love to share information with you. We also have our website at hoaliving.com and our YouTube channel where you can find the recordings of all these events. Once again, I'm Michael Johnson, privileged to be the CEO of the 50,000 home owners who are members of the HOA Living Network and our 130 plus employees and almost 10 companies now. I'm excited to make this presentation today, also serving on the CI National Board of Directors. And yeah, I can't help you with your membership or anything, but if you have any questions, get a hold of me. All right, today we're going to talk about federal laws for associations and which ones apply. We're going to start with the oldie and the goodie, right? The Over-the-Air Reception Devices Act, part of the Federal Telecommunication Act, I believe from about 1995, 96 time. We shorten it and call that OTARD. OTARD, it's morphed a little bit, right? On the corner of your screen is the old Dish Network DirecTV satellite dish. This was primarily what we were using before this act in regards to, but the number of people, DirecTV and Dish Network, have lost millions of customers to streaming now. And so really what our associations are dealing with OTARD, it's the same act. It's dealing with on the left side of your screen, it's dealing with the devices that are used to get Wi-Fi, high-speed internet to your homes. It's the same act covers that. It also covers TV antennas, you can see there, or the high definition channel, local over-the-air antennas, and yes, still those who have Dish Network or DirecTV, or even some internet companies use a round dish as long as it's less than 1 meter wide. This act limits restrictions that you, the association, can place upon people who want to put these kind of devices. I bolded their receiver transmit fixed wireless signals. That's our internet. That's those kind of things. So the purpose of the act is to limit you, homeowner association, condominium association, ability to place restrictions on the placement of these devices. You can read the entire rule at fcc.gov/media over-air reception device rule. If you Google FCC OTARD, it'll come up as well. So what kind of restrictions is this federal act prohibiting you from doing? Well, basically 3 things, right? You can't unreasonably delay or prevent the installation, maintenance, or use of one of these devices. So if you have a process, it needs to be speedy. And we're going to talk about that in other federal laws later this afternoon. It cannot unreasonably increase the cost of installation, maintenance, or use. Okay, so you can't make the aesthetics so much that it would cost substantially more. And you cannot preclude the reception of an acceptable quality signal. So you have to, you can't say hide it on the back of your house if the signal can only be strongly received from the front of the house. Now, the OTARD deals with property that is owned by the homeowner. If you're in a condominium building, most likely the or owned or exclusive use. So condominium building balcony of my unit, I have exclusive use of that. However, the railing and the wall that keeps me from falling off the balcony is common area, it belongs to association. Association can prohibit attachment to the common area, but the homeowner could use a pot or another thing, put concrete in it, put a pole in it, and have it stick over so it's getting a direct line of sight for any of these devices. So unreasonable delay, okay? So asking them to get a permit or approval prior to installation has been considered creating an unreasonable delay. So how do you manage this a little bit without requiring it to go through your normal architectural process? You have to have policies pre-written, put in a resolution, have the policy adopted so that someone can go to your website, find what the policy is, and follow it. You can't make them go through an approval process. Things to consider when determining whether an expense is reasonable, right, is the act actually says any requirement to pay a fee to the local authority, meaning you, the association, for a permit to be allowed to install an antenna would be unreasonable because such permits are prohibited. May also be unreasonable for local government, community association, or landlord to require a user to incur additional costs with the installation. So cost of equipment and services, and looking at treating all exterior modifications similarly. What's unreasonable placement? Okay. Enforcement placement preferences have to be clearly articulated in writing and made available. So like we said, adopt a policy ahead of time. That takes care of the time issue as well. Cannot be in a location that degrades reception. Not all restrictions are prohibited. The rule does not prohibit clearly defined legitimate safety restrictions, even if they impair installation or antenna use. And once again, can't be overly burdensome. Historic buildings, some of you are in historic buildings, you can have more broad restrictions to keep your historic nature. And you can require or strongly suggest that the device be placed on a part of the building on a particular part of a building if it does not degrade the reception. All right, let's talk about the American flag. This is also very common act that we're referred to quite a bit. Remember, the U.S., this is the U.S. Freedom to Display the American Flag Act of 2005. And remember that on our pyramid of hierarchy, laws and statutes are at the very top. And if you subbed out that laws and statutes and pulled it out even, it's federal laws, federal case law, state laws, state case law. And so a lot of states, including Utah, where I'm currently located, have their own American Flag Act law. And for instance, in Utah, it's both the US flag and the Utah state flag, which we just changed in the legislature. So now there's two. So who knows which one's protected by the act? Probably both. But remember, federal law trumps state law, and they're at the top. So even if your CC&Rs say no flagpoles, you got to be careful, because is the flagpole's purpose to put up the US flag? no rule, the federal statute says no rule is to prohibit the US flag in an area of exclusive possession or use. So I have a little front yard. It's owned and maintained by the association, but only I can use it. That's exclusive use. So you got to think about that. Basically, there's a couple things here. The picture of it attached to the garage, that needs to be allowed in basically every situation. Even if it's common area, right outside my door, my condo or townhome, you need to allow this kind of a mounting, just a little angled, 45-degree angled flag mount. Where associations have gotten themselves in trouble and on the news is kind of this example to the right, where you have a detached home and they put up a flagpole that is not in scale to the size of the home. And many associations have rejected such applications, and then they get on CNN or the news because it's a veteran or someone's kid is in the military, or they're just a proud American, and it becomes the association's anti-American issue. So the key on the single family home and the giant pole they want to show is have good negotiations with that homeowner. See if you can get that pole down a little bit. There's obviously the bigger the pole, the bigger the flag, the bigger the ropes, the bigger the banging of the ropes against the pole on windy days, then that's a noise nuisance to the neighbors. So if this single family house is on an acre lot and another home's not for another acre, is that really going to be an issue? So you got to consider all those things. Our advice always, don't get yourself on the news. Okay, a lot of people are familiar with and heard of the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, FDCPA. And this is the act that when we have debt, this protects us from the credit card company calling us at 2 in the morning or showing up at our place of employment. It makes them prove the debt if they send a debt collection letter. I'm sure I'm not the only human being that's ever had a misplaced bill, or when I was younger, forgot to pay a bill, or didn't have the money to pay a bill and got a collection notice from a company. The FDCPA is a Consumer Protection Act for collections. However, typically, community associations are not subject to the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Our strong recommendation, however, is to follow it, the best practices. Now, if you've moved your delinquent accounts to an attorney, they are subject to the FDCPA because they don't own the debt. If you're the community association going after the debt, whether through your community manager or directly, then you're likely not. But still follow the consumer protections that are built into the FDCPA, whether or not this technicality is in play or not. Be respectful when collecting the assessments. Do not place a sign at the entrance to the community that says, Mr. Michael Johnson, you're 3 months delinquent on your assessments. Do not guilt and shame through newsletters, websites, public board meetings, delinquent homeowners, okay? Be respectful. Develop and follow a collection policy. If you're a client of one of our communities, managed communities, one of the first things we do is ask you to adopt a written collection policy. That takes all the ambiguity out of it, and now we're following a process, so everyone's treated the same. Work closely with a collection attorney for collection of unpaid aging assessments. Have your policy reviewed by your legal counsel. Make sure it's consistent with your governing documents, and then at the proper time, which is different in our different states we practice in and across the country. Some states, the management company is allowed to file the lien and can even file for a non-judicial foreclosure. In other states, it maybe is a management or the association can do a collection letter, and then it needs to go to a legal process. So make sure you identify in your state what's required. A great resource for that is actually the CAIonline.org, CAIonline.org, and I believe it's government affairs or public policies, and you can see some best practices, and you can even search by state on some of these kinds of issues. All right, Americans with Disabilities Act. Are we, as community associations, or are we not subject to the ADA? Generally, no. Community associations are not subject to the Americans with Disability Act. You're like, wait a minute, that's not right. Okay. So ADA is for businesses. Community associations are not defined as businesses generally, and they are subject instead to the Fair Housing Act, which has a lot of similar requirements. And so we'll talk about that. But the Americans with Disabilities Act, generally not subject to. However, associations, you can cross the line, make yourself a for-public business, even though you're a nonprofit private association, by some examples. Do you have a restaurant, a golf course, a swimming pool, a wedding or events reception area that you can rent out to the public? Do you host swim teams, swim meets, swim aerobics? Do you charge fees for the general public, not members of your association, but the general public to use tennis courts or pickleball courts? If you are opening it up to people outside of your association, then you are crossing over a line, and you need to consult with an attorney who specializes in ADA and fair housing and see if you are subject to the ADA, because there's some stronger regulations there. And the association, if you're a business, if you've crossed that line, you have to pay for some of those things, where under this Fair Housing Act that we're going to talk about, the association doesn't necessarily have to pay anything sometimes for these accommodations. So the Fair Housing Act talks about reasonable accommodations. And according to the FHA, and this isn't first-time homeowner association, it's Fair Housing Act, a change, exception, or adjustment to a rule, policy, practice, or service that may be necessary for a person with a disability to have an equal opportunity to use and enjoy a dwelling. That comes under the FHA, the Fair Housing Act. So you have someone who is hearing impaired, and they need a sign language interpreter at a board meeting or an owner meeting. Okay. That's a reasonable accommodation that you would have to provide. Just one example. We'll look at several others, including assigned parking. You have a community and all the stalls are pre-assigned, but someone needs to be closer because they have an assistance device to their unit, and there may be their stalls across the parking lot a little bit. A reasonable accommodation would be to switch some parking. And we know, yes, sometimes the specific numbered parking stall is titled with the specific unit. Once again, these are not always clear-cut or easy situations. You are going to need to consult with legal counsel. But a reasonable accommodation would be switching some parking stalls around so that while that person that needs that accommodation is there, they can have that. service or assistance animals, and we'll talk deeper about that, and rule-based accommodations that might be required so that some of your rules can be modified for the person that needs that accommodation. I'm thinking of an association that has a rule, has trash dumpsters, not individual cans at each home or toters, but dumpsters. And, you know, those dumpsters, big 6-8 cubic yard dumpsters, someone in a wheelchair can't lift their trash up into them. So maybe that person is allowed to put the trash next to the dumpster on certain days so that the maintenance staff can come throw it in the dumpster or leave it outside their front door. Same kind of situation. Okay. So you have to think about every rule, and does it need a modification accommodation for someone who requests it? Reasonable accommodations. Now, reasonable modifications, the Act says reasonable modifications are a structural change made to existing premises, occupied or to be occupied by a person with a disability, in order to afford such person full enjoyment of the premises. Here's the question, and I teased it before when talking about ADA. Who is responsible for paying the expense of making a reasonable modification? The resident making the request may be required to pay the full cost of a modification and may be required to return the space to the original condition after moving out or no longer needing the modification. So let's look at a condominium owner on a 3-story garden style condo building and no elevator, and they're in a wheelchair and they need a ramp up to the 2nd story. That's a pricey conversion to add a ramp where the stairs were, or in addition to the stairs, right? The Fair Housing Act says that the resident, you can make the resident pay for that full thing. You can make the resident build it to code and build it to your specifications. But our suggestion for best practice there is to work with the person making the modification request. The association, they can build a wood ramp that's structurally sound and doesn't necessarily match your stucco or your brick of your building, and that would meet the Fair Housing Act. But maybe the association, especially if you're going to require them to remove it when they don't need it any longer or move out, association might want to do a more permanent structure. And so maybe it'd be okay to have some sort of cost sharing where the association says, hey, we're going to pay 50%, you pay 50%, we're going to pay 20%, you're going to pay 80%, whatever. I just think don't make it a cold, fast, hard rule that the resident making the request has to pay 100% of it. Sometimes that makes complete sense. Sometimes it makes sense for the association to get involved. And we're about building community, right? And I think that's a great way to build community by making that assistance. Some people might be thinking, okay, what's the definition of resident? A resident, they can be an owner, guest of an owner that lives there, or a tenant, right? So it doesn't have to be an owner. A renter who's legally and lawfully renting a unit has the same rights under Fair Housing Act as an owner does. So who's entitled to reasonable modifications? Persons with a disability as defined by fair housing that have an identifiable relationship between the disability and the requested modification. So if they come and say, we need a ramp, and they don't have we need a ramp to our second floor condo unit, but it's because we're hearing impaired that there's no identifiable relationship there. Does that make sense? So between the disability and the requested modification. Now, the Fair Housing Act and actually the Americans with Disability Act. So even though we talked about just a minute ago that we're probably not subject to the ADA unless we've converted some of our facilities to public use as well, this part about service animals and assistant animals, this rule, this notice here, FHEO 2013-01, is for both. So it doesn't matter. According to the FHA, persons with a disability are the individuals with mental or physical impairments that substantially limit one or more major life activities. And if you go to the full hundreds of page document, they list all the disabilities. So limits one or more major life activities. Now, we have a lot of requests for more than ever before, the last 10, 15 years. Comfort and assistance dogs and cats and everything you can imagine. And it has gotten a little bit out of control sometimes. And yes, unfortunately, every once in a while, and I won't give a percentage, 2, 3, 4, 5% of the time. Some boards would say half the time. Someone who doesn't have a legitimate need just wants to have a pet, and they make that request, and that sours it for everybody. So here's a little funny video. I hope this comes through on kind of how out of control this has gotten.
Next. Checking in.
You know it.
Go ahead and place any bags or pets on the scale, please.
No problem.
I cannot allow that animal to board the plane.
Oh, no. It's okay. It's okay. She's a circus animal.
She's a dinosaur.
I mean, he needs her for emotional support.
No.
Yes, please. We're not just one of those bogus a-hole couples. I get anxiety, and I need her to calm me down.
Oh, word? Because I'm getting anxiety just standing here.
I was with her at birth, and I've been separated from her one time, and I will not let that happen again.
He wouldn't even have the courage to talk to you right now if she weren't here.
Exactly.
He's the most cowardly man you've ever seen.
Well,
so unattractive.
Okay, that's not really helping. Listen, I didn't want to do this, but I read the bylaws, and there's no specific rule stating that I can't have a dinosaur on your plane, so load her up.
It could kill everyone on board.
Name one person who was killed by a dinosaur.
What about at that park they keep having to close down?
What park?
We don't know what you're talking about.
Look, I want to help you, but I have to at least know that you have some control over the animal.
You want to see control? I'll show you control.
She's highly trained. Watch.
No, that's not. That's just, she's super submissive.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Sit.
Come on, you have to say it with authority. Watch. Blue! Go full beast mode!
Very good, honey. Blue, eat your pole.
You're just saying things she's already doing.
Blue, stay! She understands.
She's in a kennel. Where's she?
Oh, no! Here we go.
Can I speak with your supervisor?
So a little levity to a complicated situation. Once again, don't let that 1 out of 20, 25 homeowner who you know is trying to work the system color your thinking when it comes to quickly and responsibly responding to these requests. For animals, they don't have to be trained or certified. An assistance animal is not a pet. So if you have pet no pet rules or one pet or this kind of pet, they're not pets. They are service or assistance animals. So separate those in your mind, and they don't have to be trainer certified. They don't have to have a green or blue or yellow coat on to meet the need. An assistant animal can perform many disability-related functions: guiding, alerting, protecting, rescuing, and there's the big one, emotional support. So how, as you as a board in this situation, how can you evaluate or consider what can you do? Two things here. Does the person seeking to use and live with the animal have a disability, physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more life activities? And does the person making the request have a disability-related need for an assistance animal? Those are the requests. In other words, does the animal work, provide assistance, perform tasks or services for the benefit of a person with a disability, or provide emotional support that alleviates one or more of the identified symptoms or effects of a person's existing disability? Very broad. And there's no requirements that the association can't do a deep dive medically. Basically, they say they have the need. That's almost enough. Best practice is to respond within 10 days of getting the request. If there's a delay for any reason, let the homeowner know immediately and invite them to participate in your process. We're currently co-defendants with a large association in a lawsuit because it was our first request for support chickens. And the homeowners in a no chicken community, as a regular residential neighborhood, requested 8 support chickens. And the association and management had never had a request for support chickens, let alone 8 of any support type of animal. And the association, with their legal counsel and with management, took 6 weeks to review and make the accommodation, and has been sued over the fact that it took 6 weeks. So the government is saying 10 days. And so if you just had your meeting, the request comes in the next day, you don't have another meeting for 2 months, doesn't matter. Get on this right away. Our recommendation always is to send it directly to legal counsel immediately and let legal counsel deal with it, not management or the board. So they're going to look at, does the person have a disability related need, and documentation. So reliable documentation can be requested if disability is not readily apparent or unknown. So if a person is missing their legs, then that's readily apparent. Or if they're blind, readily apparent. But the emotional support, anxiety, depression, those kind of things, not readily apparent. Or even if someone has seizures and has an animal trained to alert for those kind of things, then you can get reliable documentation. Once again, we're not going to find what that is, but it can come from physicians, psychiatrists, a social worker, or any mental health professional, therapist, psychiatrist, counselor. So pretty much anyone can give you the documentation, and don't hold fast to some note from some specialist. You can deny some requests, right? If you have a dog that is a danger and has been noticed as a dangerous type of breed to have, then you don't have to allow that. Or if the service animal is going to cause significant damage to the property, not their internal property, but this is a good example, but to the building, the structure, the aesthetics, then that could be denied. Or a threat to others, right? They can't, we have a community where a dog that was a service or emotional support animal of some sort kept biting others in the neighborhood. And finally, through the court system, they had to get a different kind of service animal because the service animal they had was dangerous. You cannot deny requests based on fear or speculation, or the uncertainty of the disability, or whether or not you think that disability requires an assistance animal. Don't become experts. Don't pretend to be experts, okay? Just get this to an attorney, have them look at it. You have to approve these requests unless there's an undue financial or administrative burden. It'll fundamentally alter the nature of the housing provider's services. There's a direct threat to health and safety of others, or threat of substantial physical damage to property of others. Once again, about fifth time I've said this, do not make this decision on your own. Get it to legal counsel for their assistance. Have them do the communicating. But even if you do that, firsthand experience, you can still be named in a lawsuit. Develop a policy now, just like your collections policy and your over-the-air reception device policy. Develop a policy now for how these requests will be processed, and reach out to legal counsel for guidance to avoid any fair housing claims. Because remember, they are able to go to the government, and the federal government empowers different agencies in different states to administer the Fair Housing Act on their behalf. So I don't go to the capital of the state and find an office of fair housing. They've empowered an agency in the state to handle these complaints, and they put in a complaint against you. They get the full attention of the federal government through your state office they've assigned this to represent them while you're spending lots of legal money on your own. So get it all done ahead of time, have it reviewed, be generous in your accommodations when possible, and have active communication nonstop with the person making a request. Now, there are so many federal laws and acts out there, and we could spend a week talking about them. These are just some of our favorites, or some of the ones that come up every single day. And so I am more than excited to hear your questions and some of the things you've come up with in your community. So raise your hand if you would like to be your microphone unmuted. And I saw one pop on the screen, but I didn't see the name. I'll let Neil, I'm seeing a couple. I'll let the staff get some people on for us.
All right, we've got Crystal here. You want to
Crystal, tell us where you're viewing and what your question is.
Yeah, I'm with Cannon Park Townhomes, and my question is about a homeowner that may have an inclined drive, and they would like to, I guess, they come to the board to ask about, getting the inclined drive fixed.
Yeah, because of a accommodation request.
Yep, exactly.
Yep. So once again, you probably, if they have a verified or close to verified disability, you need to allow that to happen, but the association does not have to pay for any of that if they don't want to. So be generous in the accommodation, but the law does not require you, the association, to finance that modification.
Okay, and if they don't have a disability, then it same rules, if you will, apply situation.
Yeah, just like any regular architectural request, if they're not asking for a because of a disability, then yeah, you don't have to grant that. But if they're willing to pay for it anyways, and it's not, you know, a lot of times we slope things away from our buildings to keep the water going towards the buildings. If it's not going to affect drainage and they're willing to pay for it, disability or not, maybe something the association wants to consider.
What if the homeowner is saying that they can't use their drive because it's so inclined that when they park their car, the door falls back and injures them? Would that be something that would fall into the responsibility of the HOA then having to pay because of said injury that could happen?
This is a good one.
Yeah.
I'm going to say not an attorney, consult legal counsel, but if it was built to code and the city code, then you're fine. And that is the driveway owned by the association, I assume.
Yeah, it's common area.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, I've visited friends that live in very steep driveways in places, and I backed into the driveway so the door would fall open, not against me. So, you know, there's ways around it. Talk to legal counsel, but it's not a disability, and so the association probably doesn't have to pay for it. But open negotiations and see if we can work something out that's win-win for everybody. Hopefully. All right, good luck with that. I want to hear a report back.
Okay.
Okay, who's next?
Next, we have Barry Johnson.
Hello, Barry. He's muted.
We'll see. We'll give him another second, see if he unmutes, and then we'll go to our next one.
All right. Okay.
There we
did
go.
that work?
There we
All
go.
right.
We can hear you.
Glad to attend your session. I appreciate them. I learn a lot. Question is, do tenants who assert service dog, I guess you could say, rights or privileges, are they immune from common rules like leashes and waste pickup and that sort of thing?
That is a fantastic question. And the answer is two answers. We talked about on that slide, they're not pets. So if your rule says these are the rules for pets, modify your rules to say for animals, right? And then, yes, they are subject to any animal rules, leash rules, cleaning up the waste, you know, being a nuisance, barking, those kind of things. You can still, associations have been allowed to still enforce those kind of animal rules. Don't call them pet rules, call them animal rules in their communities. So that's a great question.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome, Barry. Any others, Neil?
Yep. So next is going to be Ferris Taylor. Ferris, go ahead.
Not seeing a new name pop up.
All right. Well, we'll go on to the next one. So the next is Stephen West.
Stephen, how can we help you today?
Hey, Michael, thanks for taking my call. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can.
So going back to OTAR, over-the-air reception devices, does this act or law limit restrictions the HOA has or can say on how many a single-family home can have on their property or their building?
That's a great question, Neil. Do you? I honestly don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, when I was reviewing and kind of putting the information together, they did not discuss limiting the number.
What I remember,
devices.
I remember from a law symposium, they could have one of each kind of device. So you could have a device for your TV, one for internet, one for the local HD broadcast. I remember talking about that, but I know what you're talking about, probably, Stephen, where Dish Network or DirecTV upgrade their dishes over there or change the configuration, and the installer comes and puts a new one up and doesn't take the old one down. And I do not believe, I think the association, if one's not in use, I think the association, consult with legal counsel, but I'd be very comfortable sending that owner notice that the dish no longer in use would have to be removed prior, or it needs to be removed since it's no longer in service.
And I think that that's the kind of stuff that would be really good to clarify in those rules. Hey, we want the dishes as much as possible on the rear elevation. We want these to be removed as soon as they're no longer in use or useful, right? You switch from dish to DirecTV, the DirecTV guy's not taking that dish down. So that kind of stuff I think would be great to clarify in that resolution.
Yeah. Neil and
for
I
those
are
meetings.
nerds when it comes to all this, so we're going to find out the answer. And when we send out the email that this video is posted in the next day, we will send out a definitive answer on what we find out for that, Stephen. Thanks for your question. Any
I
others?
appreciate that.
Nope, no problem.
Okay, we're gonna try Ferris again. It looks like
Oh, Ferris popped up. Yep.
Okay.
Just needs to unmute.
Maybe he stepped away, but those were our questions. I didn't see anything in anywhere else.
I just got a notice of is there two new hands raised? Or it might be the same.
One of our
Yeah.
community managers has a question here, so we'll allow them to talk really quick.
Bring it on.
Hi, Michael. It's Nicole from Draper. I just
Hi,
had
Nicole.
a question about the servicing companion animals.
Yep.
Coming from multifamily housing, I dealt with that a lot. And one thing that the attorney told us when it came to multiple service animals, if anyone's ever addressed that, he said, you need to be able to determine what service this animal provides that the other one does not. So
Yeah.
just, in regards to the 8 service chickens, what does chicken 2 provide that chicken 1 does not, and so on,
Yeah.
3, 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah, exactly. So in that case specifically, the association allowed 2 service chickens. It just took them 6 weeks to get there. They allowed 2 because there was 2 different disabilities identified, and the federal government actually agreed, even though the requesting residents sued on that matter as well. The government did agree with the association that 2 was the right in number. They just thought 6 weeks was too long to make the decision. So thank you, Nicole, for bringing that up. Crystal, do you have another question? Okay, yes.
Perfect. Not related to the topics that we covered, but if you have an HOA where there were 3 board members and 2 resigned, what would be the steps that are required or need to be taken to have those seats filled? We are actually in that situation now, but we're a very small community. There's only 19 homeowners.
Yeah.
And we don't get any participation. So we're not really sure how we would be able to fill seats.
Yeah. Yes, that is a fun situation. The one remaining lucky soul gets the right to appoint who those other two folks are, and have to look at your specific bylaws. If it allows non-homeowners to serve on the board, you might want to tell your homeowners that 2 of the 3 board members are going to be renters or people that don't even have any ties to the community, if someone doesn't step up. So the state laws in the Nonprofit Corporate Act in almost every state, all of them allow the remaining board members, in this case, one person, to appoint those spots. And nonprofit corporate acts in almost every state do allow non-owner board members. However, in Utah, for instance, it says subject to what the individual bylaws in the community say. And so we'll need to get in there. So get with your community manager or get a hold of us, and we can kind of look at that for you. One thing we're working on nationally, just interesting enough, is the idea of we have communities with 200 homes where no one wants to serve on the board anymore, and there's 1 or 2 people who want to do it. They can't get anyone to help them out of 200 units. And so the idea of paid compensated board members, just like a for-profit board does, how to roll that out and make that a possibility. And then you go to your 19 homeowners and say, we're going to have to pay an attorney and an architect to serve on the board, and our dues are going to go up $40 a month per unit if someone, but that's not in place yet. But that's your situation you bring up is very common. And so reach out. You're welcome to reach out to me directly or your community manager, and let's look and see if we can find some creative solutions.
Okay, thank you.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you can join us tomorrow. For those of you that are Utah residents or just want to know what Utah came up with in the legislature this year, there's a couple great nuggets in there, a lot of clarifications on previous bills, and we'll be doing that again tomorrow at noon. If you can't join us, that will be posted to the YouTube channel and HOAliving.com shortly thereafter. Once again, stay safe out there today. I look forward to spring just around the corner. Have a happy Easter.